two men grow up in the same city, same streets, same trades, same opportunities. One becomes the wealthiest man in Babylon. The other spends his life wondering why wealth never came to him. The difference was not talent. It was not connections. It was not fortune. It was a set of principles. Principles so simple that most people dismiss them. Principles so consistent that those who apply them cannot fail to accumulate. And here's what makes this remarkable. These principles were not discovered in the 20th century. They were not uncovered by modern financial research. They were practiced in ancient Babylon, one of the most prosperous civilizations in human history, over 4,000 years ago. In his book, The Richest Man in Babylon, George S. Clason distilled those principles into a series of parables, published in 1926, still in print today. Not because it is entertaining, because it is correct. Clason's book is structured as a collection of parables set in ancient Babylon. These are not fairy tales. They are case studies, written in the language of fiction but built on the logic of capital accumulation. Clason's core argument is this: wealth is not an accident. It is not the result of luck, inheritance, or exceptional intelligence. It is the result of a system, applied consistently, over time, without deviation. That system can be learned, it can be replicated, and it begins with a single decision. From the ideas in this book, we can derive 7 financial blueprints. Blueprint 1. Pay yourself first. Arcad was not born wealthy. He was a scribe. He copied clay tablets for a living. He earned a wage. He spent it. He had nothing left. Then his mentor Algamish asked him a question that changed everything. Of all the gold you earn, how much do you keep? Arcad had no answer. He paid his landlord. He paid the merchant. He paid the butcher. But he never paid himself. Algamish gave him one instruction. A part of all you earn is yours to keep, not less than 1/10, and it must be the first payment you make, before any other. This is the foundational principle of the entire book, and it sounds obvious. Most people believe they already do this. They do not. What most people actually do is spend first and save what remains. The problem is structural. Expenses expand to fill available income. There is almost never anything left at the end of the month. Not because income is insufficient, because the sequence is wrong. Arcad reversed the sequence. He saved first. Then he built his life on what remained. The lesson here is not about the percentage. 1/10 is the framework. The principle is the priority. When saving becomes the first transaction, not the last, the entire financial architecture changes. Automate it. Make it non-negotiable. Treat it like a tax you pay to your future self. Blueprint 2. Gold multiplies when put to work. Saving 1/10 is not enough. This is where many readers of personal finance stop. They build a savings account. They feel responsible, and their money sits, year after year, producing almost nothing. Clason makes this error explicit. Gold that sleeps in a purse is a useless thing. Gold that is put to work, deployed into productive ventures, lent at fair terms, invested in reliable instruments, begins to multiply. Arcad describes this as gold having children. Each coin deployed produces offspring. Those offspring produce their own offspring, and over time, the offspring begin to outnumber the original coins by a significant margin. This is compound growth, described 4,000 years before the term existed. The structural insight is not that compounding is powerful. Everyone has heard this. The insight is that compounding requires deployment. Capital that is not deployed does not compound. It sits. And sitting capital is not neutral. In an inflationary environment, sitting capital loses purchasing power every year. The rational investor understands that deployment is not optional. It is the only mechanism through which wealth actually grows. The question then becomes, deployed where and under what conditions? That leads directly to the next blueprint. Blueprint 3. Guard against loss. Before you ask what return you might earn, ask a more important question. Can I afford to lose this? Clason addresses capital protection with more urgency than almost any other principle in the book. He tells the story of a man who gives his gold to a bricklayer to invest in jewels. The bricklayer knows nothing about jewels. He makes poor decisions. The gold is gone. The lesson here is not that investment is dangerous. The lesson is that capital should only be deployed with those who have verified domain-specific competence. Consider the mathematics of loss. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain to recover. This means that a single catastrophic loss can permanently impair a portfolio, even if the investor continues investing correctly from that point forward. The romantic appeal of unusual opportunities, the tip, the deal, the once-in-a-lifetime investment, has destroyed more wealth than any market crash in history. Avoiding loss is not a conservative posture. It is the most aggressive thing a long-term investor can do. Every large loss avoided is a compounding cycle preserved. Security of principal comes first. Return on principal comes second. Blueprint 4. The 5 Laws of Gold. This is the structural core of the entire book. Clason does not simply tell stories. He codifies the principles into 5 explicit laws. These laws are stated precisely. They are worth understanding precisely. The first law. Gold comes to those who save at least 1/10 of their earnings. The second law. Gold multiplies for those who put it to work, in ventures that produce returns, managed by people with competence. The third law. Gold clings to those who seek the counsel of wise men, those with proven knowledge of its nature. The fourth law. Gold slips away from those who invest in purposes they do not understand, or who trust the romantic counsel of inexperienced people. The fifth law. Gold flees from those who force it into impossible returns, or who follow the advice of tricksters and schemers. What is remarkable about these 5 laws is their completeness. Laws 1 through 3 describe how wealth is built. Laws 4 and 5 describe how it is destroyed. Most financial frameworks describe only one side of this equation. Clason describes both. This reveals something important. The path to wealth is not simply about making correct decisions. It is equally about avoiding the categories of decision that reliably destroy capital. The investor who follows laws 1 through 3 consistently and avoids the conditions described in laws 4 and 5 will accumulate. Not because of exceptional insight, because the system works when applied correctly. Blueprint 5. Debt as a strategic variable. Clason dedicates an entire section of the book to a character named Babylonian. Babylonian is a former camel trader who fell into debt, was sold into slavery, and eventually earned his freedom. When he returns to Babylon, he has nothing. But he does not begin by trying to get rich. He begins by creating a system to repay what he owes. He divides his income into 3 portions. 1/10 to himself. Savings, always first. 7/10 to his household. Food, shelter, living costs. 2/10 to his creditors, divided proportionally among every person he owes. He visits each creditor personally. He explains his situation without shame. He commits to a fixed repayment each month, and he executes without deviation. The structural lesson here is not about debt elimination as a moral virtue. It is about debt as a variable that consumes future income. Every coin committed to repaying a creditor is a coin that cannot be saved or invested. The longer debt persists, the longer the compounding cycle is delayed. Babylonian's approach is rational, not emotional. He does not panic. He does not hide. He creates a system, communicates it clearly, and executes it consistently. Debt is not an abstract problem. It is a claim on your future income. Treating it as a structured financial variable, with a defined repayment architecture, converts a psychological burden into a manageable operational problem. Eliminate it systematically. Then redirect that capital toward accumulation. Blueprint 6. Make your dwelling a productive asset. Clason argues that the man who owns his dwelling has fundamentally different financial architecture than the man who rents indefinitely. This is not a statement about property markets. It is a statement about recurring costs and equity conversion. The rent paid to a landlord each month is a cost with no terminal point. The mortgage paid on an owned home converts that same monthly cost, over time, into ownership. The man who owns his shelter does not fear the landlord's decisions. His housing cost has a defined endpoint. His family's security is structurally improved. Clason's characters make this calculation deliberately. They do not buy impulsively. They buy when the conditions are rational, when the total cost of ownership makes structural sense relative to their income and their capital position. The lesson here is not that property is always the correct decision. It is that housing is a capital allocation decision, not simply a lifestyle decision. The numbers matter. The duration of the commitment matters. The opportunity cost of the capital deployed matters. Approach it as an investor would approach any significant deployment of capital. Analyze it, stress test it, then decide. Blueprint 7. Build toward income independence. The final blueprint addresses the objective that the entire system is designed to achieve: a future in which your capital generates income without requiring your labor. In Babylon, there was no pension, no state support, no mechanism beyond personal accumulation. Clason's characters understand this clearly. The man who reaches old age with no stored capital is entirely dependent on others. This is not simply a financial vulnerability. It is a structural loss of autonomy. The principle Clason establishes is that accumulating income-producing assets, assets that generate returns independent of ongoing work, is not a secondary objective. It is the primary one. Modern investors have instruments that Clason's characters could not have imagined. Index funds that capture broad market returns, tax-advantaged accounts that compound without annual friction, dividend-generating portfolios that produce regular income, fixed income instruments that preserve capital while generating yield. The tools are different. The logic is identical. Build a portfolio that generates income. Protect that portfolio from unnecessary risk. Allow it to compound over decades. And begin early. The mathematics of compounding are unforgiving in one specific direction. Time cannot be recovered. A 25-year-old who saves consistently for 40 years will accumulate more than a 40-year-old who saves aggressively for 25, even if the older investor contributes more per year. The irreplaceable variable is time. Start the system. Let it run. Do not interrupt it. Step back and look at the full picture. Blueprint 1 established the non-negotiable foundation: pay yourself first. 1/10 before any other obligation every time. Blueprint 2 extended that foundation. Savings must be deployed. Capital that sits does not compound. Capital that works does. Blueprint 3 introduced the discipline of protection. Security of principal comes before return on principal. Every major loss avoided is a compounding cycle preserved. Blueprint 4 codified the system. The 5 laws of gold define both how wealth is built and the precise categories of decision that destroy it. Blueprint 5 addressed the structural drag of debt, not as a moral issue, but as a claim on future income that delays accumulation. Eliminate it systematically. Blueprint 6 extended the framework to housing, a capital allocation decision that should be made analytically, not emotionally. Blueprint 7 defined the destination: income independence, a portfolio that works without requiring your labor. These principles are 4,000 years old. They were not discovered by modern finance. They were simply confirmed by it. The investor who applies them consistently, without exception, without interruption, will accumulate. Not because of intelligence, not because of timing, because the system is correct. And that is your financial blueprint. If you found this analysis valuable, leave a like and comment. It helps the video reach more people who care about long-term financial thinking. And subscribe to the Finance Blueprint for more structured breakdowns of the world's most important financial ideas.